How do you settle the key 2022 fantasy football draft debates at quarterback? It's time to break down that position right here and right now for those tough decisions on Locked On Fantasy Football.
Are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer, and when I do this, I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for sportingnews.com, loaded with content on the site now. Sleepers, busts, rankings, everything you need to dominate your draft. We also have some videos up there that you can check out our mock draft strategies as well as our sleepers and busts there to break those down on the site. And here on Locked On Fantasy Football, we're bringing back a popular piece from last year on the podcast. They are the draft debates. And excited to do this again. And what we're going to do over the next series of shows is take different positions and look at players that are ranked next to each other or going around the same average draft position here, ADP, and see where we want to go. Now, here we go against the grain a little bit on Locked On Fantasy Football. We're not looking at groupthink. We're looking at these guys in a bubble, one versus the other, to see who's the better overall fantasy football pick, factoring where you get these guys as well. So if the player comes after another and he's a better value pick, we're going to go with him. If we simply say that this is the better pick, you should go for this quarterback or running back or wide receiver or tight end over the other, just do it and be happy with that decision. So it's tough to make those calls because they could mean everything. And a few fantasy points can be the difference between winning a league and not winning a league, or just making the playoffs versus not making the playoffs. So it's important to break that down so you're getting the best value player in each tier at every position. That's what we're going to help you do. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. We are free and available to you on all platforms where you get your podcasts, including on YouTube. All right, let's dive right into the big one here. And this is one that I've been thinking about all offseason long here. We know who the top three quarterbacks in fantasy are. Josh Allen has stepped up and the number one scorer from last year, last 2 years running. He's clearly the dominant force here. Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, you can go either way. It would not surprise any of us if any one of those three of those guys is the QB1 overall in scoring here to finish the season. So after those guys, if you're going to invest highly in a quarterback, where do you go at that number 4 spot? Well, you're going to look at Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray. Lamar has been the 4 for most part, and Kyler Murray has been locked in at number 5 ahead of the rest of the second tier here. Jackson kind of floating in a tier by himself. Now, let's break down the situation for both guys and then come up with the verdict. That's what we're going to do with all these. So we'll go through 6 quarterback debates on the show. We'll do that with running backs and wide receivers, and then end the week with tight end debates. So let's take Jackson versus Murray. That's a great one to start this whole process and exercise here in trying to figure out who's going to have a better season. Well, look at Lamar Jackson. The numbers were still there last year. He missed time. He had Tyler Huntley step in and put up some numbers in his place as well. Nothing's really changed in the Ravens offense in terms of the way they approach it. It's still going to be run heavy. Lamar's going to be a big part of it. They're going to let him roam in Greg Roman's scheme here. He's going to get help, though, with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards at some point here in this backfield. So it's going to be more of the traditional running game Baltimore was expecting last year before they had to rely on Devonta Freeman and Latavius Murray and a little bit of Le'Veon Bell to piecemeal that running game. So that was a concern. The offensive line has been better as well now, so that's improved. You have Tyler Linderbaum. So anchoring the interior is a little bit better here for the Ravens. So better offensive line, better traditional running game to support Jackson. He does lose Marquis Brown. That's interesting. We'll get to that because Kyler Murray did acquire Hollywood Brown. So a little bit of shift in wide receiver there, but we know there's something else going on with Murray that's going to affect his value. So Jackson's primary targets now are Mark Andrews at tight end. He's the number one go-to guy all over the field. So pretty big source of tight end one production, the tight end two overall behind Travis Kelce. You have Rashad Bateman coming on strong as a wide receiver three, who has some wide receiver two potential here in this offense. There's some chemistry developing between Jackson and James Prochet. You've got some more depth at tight end with Isaiah Likely, Charlie Kolar joining Nick Boyle and Andrews, so a little bit more depth there. You got a big playmaker, Devin Duvernay. And we know this is still going to be a dedicated, high rushing attack Ravens offense. They're going to go back to the bread and butter that made them successful. You also figure the Ravens are going to be a strong winning team this year. They're a good bet to win the AFC North, so they're going to play from ahead. Jackson's going to be in control in a lot of those situations. They should score. They should move ahead of some teams and be in position to score quite a bit, also because their defense and that elite secondary making plays to create short fields here. So everything in the Ravens offense has that surroundings and support to potentially put Lamar Jackson back in the MVP conversation. He stays healthy, and the COVID-19 issues are the past here. So all those things say Lamar Jackson, and with pretty good durability. I know he missed some time last year, but it was a bit fluky there. And you always know that Tyler Huntley is a good plug and play there. So you have an actual weird quarterback handcuff that you can think about cheap in drafts as well to get that Lamar production, as you saw from last year. So Lamar, I'm feeling really good about. I think just everything, the circumstances there. I think Marquis Brown forcing the ball downfield to him has been tough. He's a very inefficient receiver that he can make big plays, but he didn't have a lot of volume and the scoring was limited, and he was very flashy. Where I think with Bateman, you'll have more of a steady presence there to complement Andrews. So really like Lamar Jackson quite a bit. And the rushing, that's the biggest difference here between him and Kyler Murray, that Lamar embraces the rushing. It's part of his game. He's also motivated to get that big contract. Murray has the contract in place here. So that's going to be the difference. Lamar just is going to be more dedicated. They're going to design running plays. Well, Kyler really dialed back the rushing last year. I don't think that's going to change all that much here. He wants to prove himself as a passing quarterback, and he's got the short to intermediate targets. We'll throw it out to Zach Ertz. Marquis Brown, again, a big play threat, but I'm not sure he's going to be as involved as we think to stretch the field. But that's not necessarily the nature of this offense. When you look at Rondell Moore and Zach Ertz and A.J. Green being slowed down a little bit as a veteran receiver, DeAndre Hopkins is also going to be missing the first 6 games with PED suspension. So, man, that's going to be tough to recover for that production. And again, Marquis Brown is hit or miss a little bit with his big play. High risk, high reward player. I don't buy the hype that he's going to step in and just be at that high level that he was at Oklahoma when paired with Kyler Murray. I just don't see it. He hasn't shown that to us in the NFL as much. I mean, he's been that flashy guy. He's put up decent numbers, but he's a boomer bust player from week to week. I think he's a boomer bust player potentially in his offense when you look at Green and Moore and Ertz, and their depth could expand at tight end a little bit. James Conner is a good receiver here. I think that also hurts. James Conner is a very good scorer. So Kyler Murray limited in that respect, where I think Jackson is due for a touchdown spike. Murray, we saw the touchdown regression last year. I don't think that's only going to go up here. So the answer for me clearly is Lamar Jackson over Kyler Murray. The running is a cheat code, but you got to do enough of it. And Jackson does plenty of it. I think he's going to end up having a better passing season as well. I feel better about Jackson, the momentum here in a very, very familiar offense, while Murray's having a rough playoff outing that he's got to think about, and no DeAndre Hopkins. So easy choice there. Lamar Jackson is my QB4 here. I still like those 3 guys ahead of Lamar, and it would not surprise me if Lamar ended up as the QB1 on the board, but I like those 3 guys ahead of him a little bit better. Why wouldn't you? It's Allen, Herbert, and Mahomes. But if I'm going Jackson or Murray, I'm thinking Jackson. All right, the next debate we'll hit in this segment before taking our first break. Tom Brady, the GOAT, future Hall of Famer, versus another future Hall of Famer, a decade in the league, Russell Wilson here. Changing teams to the Broncos. So Wilson experiencing what Brady did a couple years ago, long time with the same team, winning Super Bowl with that team, moving on to a new team and adjusting to a new offense and all that jazz. So let's look at Tom Brady here. He finished as the QB3, QB4, depending on how you looked at it last year, behind Josh Allen and Justin Herbert. I think people have just kind of downgraded Brady way too much after the Rob Gronkowski retirement, but you're seeing his value bounce back up. We talked about it a little bit with Russell Gage, getting help from Julio Jones, Cameron Brate emerging, some better situation in the backfield for catching passes here as well. Again, pretty good depth at that wide receiver spot. It's going to be a pass-happy offense. Going to be that Mike Evans. Going to be the alpha there, catching touchdowns and long plays. And you have Chris Godwin probably coming back here sooner rather than later. I think it's trending towards that Godwin may not need to miss much time, if any at all, here. So Brady's in business here, and I get it. He's not going to give you anything running, but it's not like Russell Wilson takes off and runs. He's older now, and that's not, again, a part of his dedicated game. It's not like he wants to have X amount of rushing attempts per game. He'll take off and run when necessary, but look at that here. I look at also the Broncos maybe being a little bit more of a balanced offense. I don't think it's only going to open it up. I mean, Jerry Jeudy, the jury's still out on him, and Cortland Sutton's going to be a key number one target, playing off that running game with Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon and stretching the field here. But I still see the Broncos having a run-heavy mentality here to protect their defense a little bit. The defense is a work in progress. I don't think it's an elite defense by any means here, so keep that in mind. And they have a pretty good run-blocking core here. And again, too much talent in that backfield to ignore that part of it with Williams and the reliable Gordon here, still very good number two as a veteran here. So I don't think they suddenly open up the passing game and go nuts here, especially with Sutton coming off an injury, Jeudy having an injury-riddled season. I think you could see some two tight end sets emerge here with Albert O and Greg Dulcich, the rookie. So a little bit more short to intermediate, run-dependent offense here, while I think the Bucs are still going to be pass crazy here. And keep in mind, when I mentioned the receivers, Evans and Godwin and Gage and Jones, you have all these other guys that are fighting for spots here. Tyler Johnson, Darden, you got Scotty Miller, you got Rashad Perriman. There's a lot of guys out there in the passing game. So the Bucs have more diversified, deeper weapons. The Broncos are down a big one without Tim Patrick. So I'm going Tom Brady here easily. And Tom Brady, get him while you can. If he's falling out of the top half of the QB1s, going past QB6 in the 12-team league, yeah, that's a really good value for Tom Brady. I'd rather go there than reach a little bit for Russell Wilson and buy too much into this hype on what he's going to do in Denver. There's going to be some high-scoring games there for sure with Wilson. But again, if I'm going to look at the run-pass ratio and Wilson's running in particular and Brady having the touchdowns and yards, I'm going with Brady. All right, there you have our look at our first two major quarterback debates here in our fantasy football drafts for 2022. So excited to break down four more for you. Some big ones coming up, including Trey Lance and Aaron Rodgers in our next segment here. I do have to tell you that our next partner has a product I literally use every day. I started taking AG1 because it has tons of health benefits. It's natural for you. I'm absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source, superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens. So that's amazing with AG1, and it just makes you feel good to start the day. It's a burst of energy and a good way to get your gut health going to start the day. And it's really great. And really with the AG1, it's just something you take in the morning and very easy to have, or just a little shot for you in the middle of the day to get going and keep going here. It's lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free. AG1 contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals or artificial anything, while still tasting good. It supports better sleep quality and recovery, mental clarity and alertness. It's one thing with the best things. The Athletic Greens is the best of the best products, and it's based on the latest science with constant product iteration and third-party testing. And it really is amazing to add AG1 to your routine and to improve your health every day. It costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. It's cheaper than getting all the different supplements yourself. You're investing in an all-in-one nutritional insurance here. Athletic Greens has more than 7,000 five-star reviews, recommended by professional athletes, trusted by leading health experts such as Tim Ferriss and Michael Gervais. So get in on AG1 only from Athletic Greens now. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. Just 1 scoop of cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NFL Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NFL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance and get in on that free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and those 5 free travel packs with your first purchase only at athleticgreens.com/NFL Network. All right, it is time to continue the show with our QB draft debates here for 2022. We're taking the biggest names and the most important decisions there you'll have to make on the clock if you're looking at QB1s or going for 2 QB or Superflex league with the decisions you need to make here. So, all right, we're moving on from Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson, Tom Brady and Russell Wilson to Trey Lance versus Aaron Rodgers here. So that's a good one, isn't it? Trey Lance has got the upside. We just saw them in this same game, kind of. Rodgers didn't play, but Lance got a lot of action in that preseason opener against the Packers. We know 49ers QBs, going back a while, have had some good success against the Packers, but a hint of what Trey Lance could do. He had that nice deep ball to Danny Gray, the rookie there. This kid is putting it all together. Big arm, a quarterback-friendly offense, a good runner, supported by a great traditional running game there in Elijah Mitchell and others. Lance has got it all: height, prototypical size. He's got a better understanding of a very good offense with Kyle Shanahan, one that gave Robert Griffin III a big season in 2012 in his first season as starter. Shanahan worked with Mike and his father in making Robert Griffin III special. Well, Lance has got all the qualities, plus the size, the durability, the arm strength, more than a traditional pocket passer body, but it can also give you a great athlete. So again, that running is going to be incorporated for sure. Well, in what Lance does, you got Deebo Samuel, George Kittle. Now you see Danny Gray stepping up a little bit. You got Juwan Jennings. You've got also Kyle Juszczyk out of the backfield. Brandon Ayuk, you can't forget about him being a key playmaker, even if he's downgraded a little bit in this offense. So everything lines up well for Trey Lance. He's going to run and pick up some of those running production pieces that Deebo Samuel gave last year. He's going to play well off Mitchell and others there. So Lance, a complete package. I love Aaron Rodgers, and he's a good value there at QB 12, QB 13, even QB 14. I would still take him over Derek Carr or Kirk Cousins there, but I just love the upside of Lance. I think Rodgers has actually limited ceiling this year. It's a pretty solid ceiling. I still think he's going to finish inside the top 10, but I think Trey Lance could finish in the top 5, and that's the difference here. So I'm going for ceiling over floor here, and Rodgers has a high floor. He's still going to finish pretty well, even if the passing numbers are not what you used to, and maybe go back to the 2019 totals pre the back-to-back MVPs without Devontae Adams. They're figuring out the pecking order: Romeo Doubs, and can Robert Tonyan get back in the field? Christian Watson, Sammy Watkins, can these guys help Randall Cobb in the production there? And is it going to be enough there with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon supporting him as receivers as well as runners? So what do you look at that? You take away some big scoring potential. If Tonyan still needs some time, Tonyan and Adams were big scorers a couple years ago here for Rodgers. So Lance just has more guys that are going to put up the numbers there with Samuel and Kittle. And that's where I trust a little bit more. And Lance has got that extra running juice that Rodgers is not going to give you anymore in fantasy football drafts. He's going to run a little bit, but not maybe nearly as enough as he will to match Lance here. So Trey Lance is the choice here over Aaron Rodgers. Again, upside, upside, upside. Rodgers I like. He's solid. But if you want to go for spectacular, Trey Lance is the guy, and he's still being undervalued there in a lot of fantasy football drafts. So excited about that, and I think you can't go wrong either way with good values. This is why you want to wait a little bit on a quarterback. If you want to avoid that tier with Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts and Russ Wilson and Dak Prescott, you've got some good values behind them. And if you want to get aggressive, I think you can go Tom Brady there behind the top 4. All right, let's go to our next debate here. It is Tua Tagovailola versus Justin Fields, and this one's interesting. They're both facing, I think, make-or-break years. Tua in year 3, Fields in year 2. Different style of offenses for both, right? It's big changes here. You have Mike McDaniel taking over 49er style offense there in Miami. You had not only Tyreek Hill, Cedric Wilson, along with Jalen Waddle and Mike Gesicki, some pretty good weapons there. You also have Chase Edmonds out of the backfield. I still think the Dolphins may be more dedicated to running game and defense than we think here. And that's why I would tone it down. I mean, keep in mind that the Kyle Shanahan offense, if you don't have a running QB, is limited. We've seen Jimmy Garoppolo be more of a facilitator, more of a QB2 here. So keep that in mind. That's where Tagovailola is being drafted, and there's some upside there for sure. But the running is limited there. That's a question mark. How is he going to connect with Tyreek Hill and Waddle? Are they going to get enough big plays where there's going to be the efficiency and the depth of target to really cash in on the attempts here? And are the attempts going to be contained a little bit as they go more toward the running game with Edmonds and maybe a healthy Raheem Mostert and Sonny Michel in the work? So they take pressure off Tua that way and run and play off the defense a little bit more, which should be a little bit improved in certain areas. So that's something you look at with Tua. So I'm going to be buyer beware on Tua. I think it's a lot to process, new offense, new weapons. everything coming together for him and not running enough. For Justin Fields, new offense as well, but I like the direction here with Luke Gentry, the former Packers assistant there leading the offense under Matt Eberflus. So you look at some of the things that are going on. I think Justin Fields just looks a little bit more comfortable. He's going to run, and you know that's going to be a big part of what he does. They're not going to rein him back in that capacity with the new coaching staff. I think Matt Nagy let him do that, but Fields is too good of an athlete not to put up those numbers. You have Darnell Mooney at Cole Kmet. So you have some legitimate weapons there that you look at. And I think there's some more developing weapons as well. I mean, Byron Pringle's on the men, but Bayless Jones Jr., the rookie speedster out of Tennessee, looks for real as a deep threat playing off Mooney. I think they'll figure out the slot a little bit better than we think. So Bears just an underrated offense. Again, the offensive line is a big question mark. The weapons on paper don't look as dazzling as what Tua has, but I think Fields, to me, is just a better player right now than Tua. I mean, Tua had a lot of momentum coming out of Alabama in college, but he had the injury that slowed him down a little bit. I think that's affected him a little bit with the footwork and being settled, and then he's not being able to stay healthy in the NFL. Fields is going to start every game. I think when he ended Ohio State, he was on a much higher plane there than Tua was when finishing up with Alabama with the injury. So Fields can operate at a high level. He's had the pro-style experience there with Ryan Day. Again, Mooney and Kmet are pretty solid two weapons to have. Don't forget about David Montgomery out of the backfield, so check down player there. Also, a good enough rushing game to help Fields here. So again, running seems to help us break some ties, doesn't it? Except in the Brady Wilson case. So here I'm definitely going Justin Fields over Tua Tagovailoa. And again, I think whether you look at ceiling or floor, I think you go with Justin Fields over Tua. I just like the player, and the talent is the number one thing we look in fantasy football, and both systems are favorable to lift these quarterbacks up here in 2022. All right, we do have a couple more debates we'd like to break down for you on today's show, and we'll do that in our final segment here, and it's going to involve a couple of second-year quarterbacks as well. So looking forward to that. Beyond Fields, we have two more second-year quarterbacks, and then we'll look at the veterans that are the other side of their debates here as we break down the biggest quarterback questions there when you're on the clock in your fantasy football drafts in 2022. Before we do that, I got to tell you, it's almost started the NFL season. I love this time of year because numbers are about to be here for real. If you're into sports betting or fantasy football, and you should be if you're listening to Locked On Fantasy Football, you need a competitive edge to win, another competitive edge, every competitive edge. That's why I highly recommend the Elias Game Plan app. It's the ultimate sports betting and fantasy companion for the NFL, NBA, and MLB. Elias Game Plan is the only sports app from the most trusted name in sports stats. That's right, the Elias Sports Bureau, the official statisticians of U.S. sports leagues in the professional level, including the NFL. Their app lets you access team and player stats, head-to-head team comparison, and Elias insights from the Elias Sports Bureau's research team. This app is really your one-stop source for player news in the league, validated player stats and team records, expert game analysis for betting, building your fantasy team, impressing friends. Perfect for the preseason. You get the player previews to help you draft a winning fantasy team, like we're doing here in Locked On Fantasy Football, team previews, so you know what to expect as the regular season kicks off. Really, I've trusted Elias for a long time. They're the go-to. They're synonymous with sports stats and information here for a long time. And take my advice. You want to download the Elias Game Plan app today. Get their expertise there on your phone. With new features available all the time, take your game to the next level. NFL season, as we mentioned, right around the corner. So don't wait. Find the Elias Game Plan in the App Store or Google Play Store right now. And this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is also brought to you by Built Bar. If you haven't tried Built Bar Puffs yet, you're depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys. And guess what? There's a new flavor ready. It's delicious, indulgent cookie dough covered in chocolate. That's right. Built has done it again. Let me introduce you to your new favorite cookie dough chunk puffs. Have a light, chewy texture, real cookie dough chunks. And of course, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. It's all the joys of eating cookie dough without the hassle of making it. Plus, it's healthy for you. Cookie dough chunk puffs are only 160 calories each, and they have a whopping 15 grams of protein packed in them. Run to Built.com to snag a box for you and the family. It will be the perfect treat, or you can just find a good hiding place and keep them all to yourself. We won't tell. Like all Built Bars, the new cookie dough chunk puff is covered in 100% real chocolate. That means they're healthy and tasty. Chocolate-covered cookie dough is a light, fluffy texture. So good. What's great about Built is that all their bars are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. Eat something that tastes good and is good for you. You're going to love the new cookie dough chunk puff. Whether you need a snack for your workout, a late-night treat, or just need to grab a quick bite, Built is the perfect protein bar. They taste better than a candy bar. Ditch your calories, fat, and sugar. Grab yourself a protein-rich Built bar. Go to Build.com, use the promo code LOCK15. That's locked on 15. That's locked on 15. Get 15% off your order. Use the promo code locked on 15 and get 15% off your order at built.com. All right, it is time to close the show looking at the biggest quarterback draft debates while you're in the clock for your 2022 fantasy football redraft leagues here. And let's go to a player that's getting some buzz here in the preseason. Yeah, another young player. That would be Trevor Lawrence. Forget the Urban Meyer, Darrell Bevell era. Here's Doug Peterson trying to fix what Trevor Lawrence can do. You also have Press Taylor. This was part of the brain trust there with Frank Reich and John DeFilippo that got a very good season out of Carson Wentz in year 2 before things went south for Wentz in Philadelphia. The numbers were very good. He was a top fantasy football asset before, of course, having the knee injury late and Nick Foles taking over and being the Super Bowl hero. So there's some parallels there. Lawrence, the talent. Again, number one thing is talent. Lawrence was labeled a can't miss talent. There's the number one overall pick coming out of Clemson. Well, here's another number one overall pick that he's been drafted next to, Jameis Winston, trying to resurrect his career from fading in Tampa and being replaced by Tom Brady in New Orleans, another AFC South team or NFC South team. So you have AFC South versus NFC South here, number one versus number one from 2021 to 2015. Trevor Lawrence, again, look at the weapons. You got Zay Jones, looks like he's going to be a factor with Marvin Jones. You got Evan Ingram looking a little bit better with Dan Arnold there. So a couple tight ends that you can look at. Travis Etienne, his good buddy from Clemson out of the backfield, fellow first round pick from 2021, back healthy here. You have Christian Kirk as your expensive kind of default number one here. You got some depth at wide receiver. Lawrence, again, the running was pretty decent last year. You didn't have a lot of multiple touchdown games. He had one early, had one late, but you really didn't get that. I think this Jaguars team is going to be more proficient in scoring here and moving the ball in 2022. So I do like Trevor Lawrence. I wouldn't overdraft him. I would still take him as a deep QB2 in the middle of the road, really, but definitely taking Justin Fields. And I would say there's a good argument to take Tua over Trevor Lawrence as well. So two guys attached from a national championship gameplay. But you look at Lawrence, again, rebound, there is some upside there. The talent is there. I still like Fields among the second-year quarterbacks to have the most impact. I think you're looking for a little bit better value. Unfortunately, Zach Wilson had the knee injury, so that might cool him off a lot of drafts. But a stash late, he's going to be really cheap for you here. But just be careful. Don't overdraft Lawrence. I think if you take him with QB 18, 19, somewhere there, that's not bad at all. And again, I don't think he's going to finish in the top 12, but if you're in a high-end streaming situation, Trevor Lawrence is going to have value. And I think he's going to be fine in a 2 QB or Superflex league. So I would definitely take him over Jameis Winston. The weapons are there. Get Winston has Michael Thomas back. Chris Olave was a first-round draft pick there. You got Jarvis Landry. You got Marcus Callaway. You got Traquan Smith. A lot of depth there in the Saints passing game. They want to open things up and throw it downfield. But at the heart, they still have Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram. So they're going to go back to what they did instead of Jameis Winston for success. There is no Taysom Hill to cut in, at least from quarterback. He might actually help him a little bit at tight end. We'll see. Troutman, the jury's still out on him after a disappointing potential breakout season last year. So there's some question marks. How does the pecking order kind of settle? Winston's coming back from a major knee injury. You don't have Sean Payton. The offense still making transition, even though Pete Carmichael Jr. is familiar. I do like Winston. I just don't see a lot of upside there. I think he's going to be valuable in the right matchups to play in certain weeks. He's got Carolina and Atlanta twice, but Carolina can have a tough defense. Atlanta's got a tough corner there, and A.J. Terrell. So I don't know if there's going to be a lot of favorable matchups where I know Trevor Lawrence is going to get some. And the Colts have a pretty tough defense, but the Texans are uppable here in the division. The Titans' defense is not that great. So you got 4 games like that. The Colts game at home, starting immediately against the Commanders. You may not have Chase Young in there, fully healthy to go after him. So it could be a good position to start the season well. So matchups are a little bit better, and the upside, the talent, a little bit better at this stage of their careers. So Lawrence in year 2, Winston trying to save his career before he turns 30 here. So I go Trevor Lawrence over Jameis Winston. And finally, let's go to our final battle here. And we did this one for fun, but it's also interesting that these guys are going back to back. People are not sure. And their teams actually played each other to start the preseason, the Giants and the Patriots. We're keeping up with the Joneses, and that means it's Mac Jones, the Pro Bowler from last year, 2021 draft pick, first rounder for the Patriots, and Daniel Jones, 2019 high first round pick for the Giants, make or break season here. So let's examine Mac Jones. He lost Josh McDaniels. Who knows who the real offensive guru is right now? Is it Matt Patricia? Is it Joe Judge? Is it Bill Belichick himself? We're not sure. Devontae Parker, does he move the needle for you? I don't know. As a number one receiver, I mean, at this stage, I mean, you got N'Keal Harry gone, so you got Jacoby Myers and Nelson Aguilar and some of these same dudes that were there last year. Hunter Henry is going to have some TD regression. Could they be run heavier with Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson? Without McDaniels, I don't think you can expect the same type of execution. You also lose James White. I guess Stevenson can pick up some of the stuff in the receiving role, but again, Mac Jones has seen things deteriorate a little bit here around him. The supporting cast in year two, I think the Patriots' schedule is also much tougher than it was last year. So, not breaks, and it's not like you were banging the table to want to play Mac Jones any given week last year. He was an okay reality quarterback, not much of a fantasy quarterback. He played well for running game and defense. You know, that's how the Patriots also want to win games. They want to win battles of attrition. They're not going to try to light up teams and throw crazily to win games. That's just not what they're going to do here. So you're not going to get the big numbers. So if you're just looking for, I'm just going to plug in somebody that can be decent in the right matchup, you're looking at Mac Jones. But Daniel Jones, you look at some of the aspects here, Brian Dable and Mike Kafka, so you got some of the Bills offense, some of the Chiefs offense. We talked about that. Kind of becoming a hybrid here. They have some big plans for the receivers, Kadarius Toney and Wan'Dale Robinson. You go to Kenny Golladay, Sterling Shepard. You still have some upside at tight end with Daniel Bellinger coming in, the rookie. There's some guys that you've had, Saquon Barkley being healthy. The offensive line looks a lot better here with Evan Neal joining Thomas there. So there are some things that look a lot improved from what we've seen with Jones, with Pat Shurmur and Jason Garrett. I just think you just have a better brain trust with Dable and Kafka. I mean, their track record with Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen speaks for itself here. So he's a high risk, high reward pick. Mac Jones has got a steady floor, but he's not exciting. He's not going to give you much flash. He's not going to give you much running game. He doesn't have the athleticism there. He's going to be okay. And he's an okay reality quarterback. This started out with Tom Brady. Keep in mind, he was not a big fantasy football quarterback until a few years down the line when they needed him more. But this is still a defensive-minded running type team. Giants are going to definitely lean on the run with a healthy Barkley. But Daniel Jones, they got to open it up. They got to see what this kid has, take some lumps. He also is playing in the NFC East, so that opens up some possibilities here for some scoring. But Daniel Jones looked comfortable in that first game action, so I just like him a little bit more. The vibes, again, out of New England with the change of offense coordinator, while the Giants have that upward trajectory at that coaching staff spot here. So Mac Jones, if you just need to back up for a week or something, you can go there. But if you want some guy that could really emerge and rise here from where he is with his ranking in ADP, it is Daniel Jones. So high risk, high reward versus safe pick, so-called, as a QB2. But if say you got a guy that you got on the back end you're not sure of, or you waited as long as you pick a quarterback and you're like Derek Carr and Kirk Cousins, but could be if you get stuck with a high floor, not enough ceiling there, that's where you might put in Daniel Jones, where Mac Jones would say that you've got a guy that you're starting more on a regular basis as your QB1 and just need a backup. So that's how you approach it in the later parts of your drafts there. And so I'm going Daniel Jones over Mac Jones personally. I just think there's a little bit more sources of scoring and potential there that you have that you don't have with Mac Jones. All right, there you have it. There's breaking down the biggest quarterback draft debates here in 2022 for fantasy football. Thanks so much for listening and making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. Now make your second listen, Locked On NFL, our team of experts breaking down the entire league for you, everything that's happening here in training camp and the preseason here on network. So check that out. For Locked On Fantasy Football, this is Vinnie Iyer. Next time we'll look at our running back draft debate. So stay tuned for that show, and we'll catch you then. And don't worry, we'll get to wide receivers and tight ends later this week as well. So have a great rest of your day, and we'll check you out with more fantasy football draft prep here on our next show.